Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited today to see my friend Pablos. Pablos, thank you for being here. It's been about a year since I saw you in
Oh,
the flesh,
wow.
right?
You're
It's
right.
been a full year since we were at the end of the earth in Antarctica. But
Yeah,
I'm thrilled to introduce you to our Walking Softer, Walking With audience.
great.
Pablos is a total change maker and via disruption, I might add. He's a hacker, inventor, technology futurist. And I love, Pablos, that you take really, really difficult things and make them
Mm.
completely understandable for the people like me that don't have your expertise. And Pablos has always been ahead of the curve. Started doing cryptocurrency in the 90s, AI for stock market trading, building spaceships with Jeff Bezos, 3D printers, this world's smallest PC, which I just like to picture like a little tiny animal using or something. And
Yeah.
you've had so many incredible inventions, things from machines that could suppress hurricanes to a laser that could help just zap mosquitoes out of the sky and eradicate malaria in partnership with Bill Gates. Pablos has over 70 patents, and I think you've probably impacted every possible sector, including climate change. You're a brilliant speaker. I know you've been on stages like Davos and CIA, Google Zeitgeist, Milken, and of course, the Walking Softer Leadership Summit in Antarctica. You have your own awesome podcast. And your TED Talks have over 30 million views. But something I want to read directly from your bio for our friends is this last part. It says, currently, Pablos is a venture capitalist at Deep Future, backing mad scientists, rogue inventors, crazy hackers, and maverick entrepreneurs who are implementing science fiction, solving big problems, and helping our species become better ancestors.
Mm.
I love that.
Sounds you were supposed to set low expectations so that I could impress your audience, but now it's all downhill.
Well, you were impressive. I mean, I've just never, you read a lot of bios, and I
Mm.
love that last line, solving big problems, helping our species become better ancestors is such a beautiful way to tie a bow on your life's work through a really unique lane. So, one, like I said, so good to see you and on,
Thank
dryish land. But I hope that you'll tell us, how do we help our species become better ancestors?
Well, it's
And
weird to think
how you got
about,
to this place.
yeah, like how we got here in the first place is that we had some ancestors that somehow made it work. Against all odds, they somehow survived and made it possible for you and I to exist. So, um, regardless of how politically incorrect it was, at least we got here. And I don't know. I think that right now we sort of live in this world where we actually succeeded at a lot of things. We succeeded at solving a lot of the problems that kept humans from thriving, and so now we have a lot of humans, and the job is really to figure out how do you take care of them and provide for them and make the world good for everybody. So if you think about the problems with climate change, those are problems that we worry about having a real big problem for us in the future, and that's cool, and it's kind of selfish in its way, and I'm okay with solving problems that we might have in the future. But we also have like a lot of real problems that exist in the world today globally, and part of the idea of like enlightened self-interest is the enlightened part. Being enlightened means you don't want to live in
Hmm.
a world where your neighbors are suffering, right? And that's not just
Hmm.
because you care about them, it's because you care about, your own safety and security, and that for your kids, you don't want to be in a world where people are having to resort to um, desperate moves and stealing your shit. So it's just I think a reasonable philosophy that almost anybody could get behind. That like we should probably uh, provide the basic needs for everybody on Earth. I think that's reasonable. I have had people argue with me about that, but most people think it's
Oh
fine.
man, there's no helping those
No,
people.
I mean,
Maybe.
some of them have, I think that it's been interesting. I don't think I could do a good job of representing their arguments, um, but they tend to be people who came from much more difficult circumstances than me. And I think, and that might be
Mm,
reasonable for them. Maybe it's fine. For me, I feel like the world sort of invested a lot in me already, and
mm,
that's, both education and jet fuel. And so I should try to contribute something commensurate with that investment. And, we don't invest as much in everybody else. It's not that I'm better. It's just that I got lucky and having to be in a place where we could afford to do that. And so I think that, if you're one of those people who the world invested a lot of education and jet fuel in, then figure out, like, okay, how do you contribute something back to the world that puts that
mm.
to use? And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that.
Uh, It's brilliant. When did you know that you could do that? How'd you go from a kid disassembling things or playing with things to realizing you had this gift and then you could also use it for such good?
Yeah.
Because again, not, I mean, imagine it's somewhat tempting to cross some lines as well.
Well, I think, yeah. So for me, if you just sort of picture, uh, me trudging home from school in the snow, in the dark, in Alaska, um, and like, when I'm like 11 years old or something, that's my childhood. And,
Hmm.
and I got a hold of a computer when I was a kid, and I felt like I had this superpower that nobody else had because nobody else had one. And I was so excited about the computer, and I would try to convince everybody that this was going to be this amazing, useful thing for them, and they mostly did not believe me. And so,
Hmm.
for me, it was always this experience of knowing that I had something powerful to share that could make people's lives better in some way, maybe just in small ways, but they hadn't seen that yet, and they didn't have that experience yet. And so, even as a kid, very early on, I got hooked on this feeling that, like, look, we can use this technology to make your business better or your school better or whatever. And that was a long time ago, but in some sense, I'm still doing that. And computers, of course, did get useful. And Revenge of the Nerds, I was right, and they have gone everywhere. But now there's all these other technologies that were elusive to us, but now we can really build them, and a lot of that is because the computers help us build them. And so,
Hmm.
when you want to look at the problems we were talking about earlier, it's like, well, we can use computers to help us figure out what's the best way to solve some of these problems, and these days, if you are, you know, building a rocket ship or a Tesla or a recycling plant, you do that by modeling it in software, testing it in software, crashing it in software, making thousands of iterations on the design, and then figuring out which ones are the best before you go build one. And so the superpowers we got from our computers are now helping us do all these other things as well. And that's why we're in this exciting moment where we basically get to reinvent everything humans have ever done. But this time, efficiency is a design requirement. The life cycle is a
Hmm.
design requirement. How is this going to impact, our societies and our communities and everybody around us? That's all, those all could be design requirements that go into these models, and we can decide what we care about the most and build the things that are better for the future. And that's happening right now. It's an exciting time.
It's super exciting. And I think some people might think of it as a juxtaposition using technology and advancement to solve problems that we've created in nature. And I think it's brilliant to lean into it because this is what's happening and it is a brilliant time to be
Yeah.
alive. Are there things that examples of what's exciting to you or AI or different things where you go, oh my gosh, that totally could be the magic ticket?
Yeah,
Like,
like,
that's it.
I'll give you some examples. I mean, they're the most fun part anyway. We have a company that figured out how to take. So if you see like a smokestack, coming out of a factory or coming out of a power plant. What's actually happening is usually burning some crap. That could be coal or gas, or old tires or something. And you're burning that to get heat. And you need the heat to make cement or to make steel or to make glass or lots of things like that. Or maybe even to make electricity. You use the heat to uh, heat up water, to make steam, to run a turbine, to run a generator, to make electrons and spit it out down the wire to your house. That's where electricity comes
Hmm.
from, is usually burning. Anyway, the stuff going out the smokestack at the top is toxic fumes. And they're toxic, meaning they're not good for you. And it's not very healthy. But we exhaust that smoke into the atmosphere, the same atmosphere that you're breathing every day. And that's not a particularly healthy thing to do. In North America, we have 20,000 smokestacks running all the time, black smoke going in the sky. That's literally what. So if you look up pollution in the picture dictionary, you're going to see a smokestack. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
So anyway, what those toxic fumes are is a mix of gases. And that could be some nitrogen, CO2, hydrogen, oxygen, these different gases. But we have a company that figured out an efficient way to take the exhaust, cool it down to cryogenic temperatures, meaning super cold temperatures, where the gases liquefy, but all those gases
Hmm.
liquefy at different temperatures. So that we can separate them out. So they get hydrogen, pump it into a truck, nitrogen, pump it into a truck, CO2 into a truck, oxygen, pump it into a truck, and they sell it. So they're literally turning the pollution into profit. In some cases, they'll make
Wow.
more money than the people running the smokestack. And yeah,
Wow.
and so we literally can, there's a huge market for these industrial gases. We use them for all kinds of things. And so we're a lot of times we're running a smokestack to make the gas in some other way. Now we just get the gas from whatever is burning and separate them out and sell those gases and on the industrial market. And so it's a beautiful way of attacking the problem kind of at its source, doing it in a way that's economic. One of the big problems we have is that these most of these types of things we want to solve are they are such big problems that you cannot solve them with
Yeah.
philanthropy. Like, I
Yeah.
got to help work on some projects for Bill Gates, and he doesn't have enough money to solve these problems. So it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't solve them, a lot of these problems, with philanthropy directly because they're so big, they're global. Well, you
Hmm.
can solve them with business because business scales. Business pays for everything that it does, but you have a customer that's paying. And so if you can do business in a cleaner, cheaper, more efficient, more humane way, then you have a solution that can scale quickly and can make a meaningful difference. And so I think that's a great example of that.
It's a fantastic example and very much what we believe in, obviously, at Walking Softer, because our hope is that we're constantly investing in and working with people, not only at the high school age, but then young leaders, and then also business
Mm.
leaders. And I know you saw a lot of that in Antarctica, and it's been really fun in this past year to see how that experience, which was our own experiment, what happens when you take business leaders to the ends of the earth and show them that climate change is real, and now say, you're an entrepreneur, you've done well, what do you think? And it's been really, some of the stories still coming out are
Yeah.
great. What was your experience like in Antarctica? Why'd you go, and what was your experience like?
I was really lucky to get invited to go on that trip with you guys. Um, I get to go a lot of cool places. That's probably the coolest, literally and figuratively. Um, I think that, I wouldn't have gone as a tourist, but I got to go
Right.
with a group, with the Walking Softer group. And to me, that was that was the magic of it. Got to spend that time with wonderful people, really get to know other folks who are trying. I mean, it wasn't Shackleton's trip at all, but we got to spend time making friends and getting to know each other, and it's people who really are looking there. I think everybody on that trip, is all seeking and trying to figure out, okay, how do we make a difference? Like what
Yeah.
is going on here on Earth? What are the things that might be solutions? And so it was really fun for me anyway to get to know people and where they're coming from. And we had a good mix of folks from government, business, and philanthropy, and nonprofits, and some teenagers, and some of everything. So it was really fun. Yeah.
Your gorgeous teenager was
Yeah.
one of them. And your value for scale comes to mind a lot when you're talking about business scaling. I'm also thinking about
Yeah.
generational scaling. And then I'm picturing you in Alaska versus
Yeah.
Sion's life, which is very
Yeah.
different. Um, what are your theories or thoughts or feelings on scaling this for generational prosperity and
Yeah, it's
education or
wild. I mean,
understanding?
being a parent is difficult job because the things that you do, the things I did was to try and give Sion everything that I didn't get. So she got to grow up in a
Mm.
city, and she got to have all kinds of cool stuff. Um, she got to go to Antarctica in high school, um, but
Yeah.
she called me. She's like, "Dad, I got a flat tire. What do I do?" And she's still driving. And I'm like, "You pull over is what you do." And she's like, "No, I got to go get my shoes for the dance or something." And I'm like, "No, you pull over right now. You don't keep driving to get your shoes." So there are some things that Alaskans would really sort of say that I'm failing at as a parent. Um, but there's in some sense, like, it is sort of a one of these things is difficult to reconcile because she is not growing up in Alaska. She's not growing up at the time that I did. The world is much different. You get a flat tire, and AAA is going to come and save her. Like, there's really nothing, um, you know, nothing she has to actually worry about in the same way. There's no bears coming after her. So I guess it's one of these things where you just have to sort of accept that, like, she's literate in the world that she's in and will be in, skilled
Mm.
at the world she's growing up in, not the one. I mean, I know how to you know tie knots. She doesn't know how to tie knots. I know how to, like, climb a mountain.
You don't need them in dance
Yeah.
shoes. There's no knots
Yeah,
in dance
yeah, very
shoes.
good. She's got her shoes. So having the right shoes, she's on top of that job. That's what matters in her life. So
I
I
love
don't know.
that. Well, she's great, and I love your guys' relationship. I love the
Thank
two
you.
of you being there, and I think that it's so important to have. We say in our house all the time, it's what's caught, not taught,
Yeah.
and that this is something that is valuable, and I think you modeled that for her by paying attention to it, having a
Mm.
presence there. I also really appreciate one of the things I talk about when I talk about you behind your back. One of the things I really appreciate is that here you are brilliant and could just school people on so many things. You show up very intellectually curious. You come asking questions, you come thoughtful. You don't, while you are an expert in so many things, you don't suck that air out of the
Mm.
room. And I think it's that collaborative energy that must make it so fun to work with you. It certainly makes it fun to learn from you and hang with you. Uh, I just feel like you have a sense of what it means to be a good leader as you're a leader in this space. I wonder if you can define your leadership values.
Oh man. Um, I mean, I think that's kind of a broad term. I think, like, for example,
Yes.
I'm not a good manager. Like, I don't wake up in the morning thinking about, like, what does my team need to thrive. I just want them to, like, go do stuff and get it done, and bug me if there's a problem. Like, that's kind of not a way that you nurture people. Even with Sion, I don't try to shape her. um, I just I think that some people are really good for that and they're very important. I'm not really one of them, I don't think, at least not at this stage. So, look, I think for my part, what I try to do is um, engage people who are smarter than me, like, and most
Mm,
people who are smarter than me, and there are a lot of them, are usually really smart at something and really stupid about other things. So
mm,
you could
mm.
kind of like say, like, in some sense you could almost say like everyone is equally smart. It's just that the distribution it varies, and so you can end up with well balanced people who are kind of smart about everything, or you can end up with super smart people who are really stupid about other things. And so I don't think it's necessarily disparaging of people, um, to say that you know that there's a difference, but I'm looking for people who are really smart about something, and I want to pick their brain about that thing. You know, and I want to learn from them about the thing they know about. People ask me, I'll like talk about nuclear reactors for 20 minutes, and then people ask me what we should do about education or who they should vote for, and there's no reason at all that you should ask me those things. Right? I can make some shit
Like,
up.
I have a
And I
lane
can,
and I'm going to stay
yeah,
in
it's
it.
like and I think that's one thing, people get disingenuous about. If you become an expert in something, people will treat you as if you're an expert in
Hmm,
everything, and that's not really true. So,
it's a good point.
So I don't know. I think for me, because I'm a computer hacker, nobody really expects me to be an expert in anything, and there's no
Hmm,
professional liability in not knowing something. If I show up and don't understand how cancer works, people don't try to discredit me because I'm a computer hacker. So I think that,
yeah, but and yet you went into even like brain surgery tools. So
right.
part of me thinks that you're somewhere thinking, how could I
Yeah,
solve this
exactly. And
cancer
I was able to
situation?
work on a brain surgery tool because I could get some of the world's smartest brain surgeons to sit down and
Ah,
answer dumb questions for me. And I could ask as many dumb
yeah,
questions as I wanted. And whereas if I was a brain surgeon asking dumb questions, well, that would be professional liability. So I think that's one of the really wonderful things that to find that I got lucky and got in my life was this sort of unique position where I can ask dumb questions about anything, but I can also get in the room with some of the smartest people. And so that's how I'm cheating, and I highly recommend it. You can see like my podcast is really just an excuse to ask smart people dumb questions. So
it's
mostly
great.
what's going on is I'm just going around tracking down smart and interesting people, picking their brains. On the podcast, I'll like record those conversations and share them. But you can learn from the same conversations I learned from. I record them.
Yeah, I am. I
Oh, good.
listen to it and I do feel like I'm learning. Yeah, I really like it because a lot of it's way over my head, but I can get, I can at least infer
Yeah.
the purpose
Well,
behind it. And I just love the
yeah, I'd say like there's a
relationships. It's very cool.
few, some episodes become like advanced mode where, if it's something I know a lot about and it's an expert, we'll try to get into the weeds. And that's for like people who want to do that, but you can skip those. And most of them I try not to leave anybody behind, trying to explain things in a way that people can feel like they can hang in there for that conversation. But that's what I love about podcasts. If it gets too far off track for you, then you just skip and go to the next one. Yeah, yeah,
That's a good point. All right, we want to do some rapid fire questions. Are you
yeah. I'm
down?
not good at rapid answers, but we can try it.
Well, this is
Oh, good.
user's choice. What is your idea, Pablos, of perfect happiness?
Oh man, you know, um, I think happiness is in some ways. I think it's pretty well articulated in like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've all seen
Hmm,
like not the food pyramid, but the other one, the one that starts with like breathing and food and water and sleep, and then works its way up to like, you know, having a meaning in life and family and community and those things. But I think to distill it down, the one that sort of resonates for me most is I feel like people thrive when they feel needed.
Mm,
You know, um, if you can find a way to be in a situation where what you do is needed by people around you, or you feel the connection between what you do and people needing it. For me, part of I think what makes it easy for me to be happy is that I can connect a lot of dots between me, what
mm,
I'm doing, and the people who need me, right? Like the people who need me are like kids who haven't been born yet in Southeast Asia or Africa or something. That's who needs me. And I'm
that.
okay with that. I'll never know them, but the things I'm trying to do are trying to make a world where they can thrive. Not everything, but to some extent. And I think so it's easy for me to feel happy because I know that the things I'm doing have value in the long run. And for a lot of people, they can't connect as many dots. So they need to do something where they can really see the value today. And like, I did this
Yeah.
thing and my kids are doing better because of it. Or I, you know, I helped somebody today. An ER doctor probably is a good example. Like, I saved that
Mm,
life today.
mm,
Boom, I feel good. Whereas that
right.
kind of person might feel uh, have a hard time doing the kind of thing I do, where it's extreme delayed gratification. Um, and so, I think you want to understand that about yourself, but one way or another, you want to find a way to tie your life, your work, your contribution to somebody who needs you. And sometimes that is just your
Yeah.
friends and family, and your kids, and that's cool. But um, but we also need people to work on the longer, bigger, slower, kinds of things. And if you can do that, that's great too. But what you don't want to do is waste your life not being useful to anyone. And I
True.
think that's very dangerous. And the people who make choices along those lines don't seem to thrive very well. And we're making it easier and easier for people to make those kinds of choices with their life. And
Mm,
that I think is a trap. There's you will
yeah.
not find a lot of fulfillment from like watching the next season of Netflix. You can do it a little bit, and but that's not going to make you happy. And I don't think it works.
Mm,
You have to you have to contribute something, and you have to be. And humans are evolved to just work, and we don't do a lot of work anymore. So we're in a risky
mm.
situation. That's what I think.
What a beautiful thing to share. I'm gonna hold that one tightly. I agree for what it's worth. That long-term view too is so valuable, especially in this case, because it's not an overnight fix. This is when we're talking about climate
Yeah.
solutions, there's very little that we can do literally in this second and see the result. You have to take a
Yeah,
long-term view.
exactly right. And that's partly because it's a big global problem, and like argue like climate's bigger than the globe because it largely
Yep,
involves the atmosphere around the globe. So it's like the one thing that's literally bigger than the
largely.
Earth is climate. So you have to like understand that to make it at the scale of the problem. Like, look, climate change as we know it is comes from human activity by and
Mm,
large. It's not exclusively human activity,
mm,
but the fact that humans are here, the things we do, we are sort of optimizing our existence for carbon emissions. That's undeniable. Like we dig that shit up out of the ground and we burn it and we stick it in the sky. That's what's going on. So you could argue about like how much can the sky handle and how long is it going to take for it to cause big problems and melt all the glaciers. You could argue about that, but it would be kind of idiotic not to acknowledge that like we are aggressively trying to put more of these greenhouse gases in the sky. And that's not, and
mm,
it's heavily politicized, of course, but they're called greenhouse gases, by the way, because in part, if you have a greenhouse, and you want to make things grow, you pump CO2 into it. Plants are actually made, plants don't grow out of the ground. They grow down from the sky. Like a
Mm.
carbon fixation is literally a plant. Photosynthesis is a plant grabbing molecules of CO2 and sticking them to itself. That's how a plant grows.
Mm.
They literally grow out of the sky, not out of the ground. It's an amazing thing. So anyway, the point, I'm
Yes.
digressing, but the point is, we need,
Oh,
yeah,
I love
forests
it.
are actually growing faster than ever right now. Why? Because we put so much CO2 in the atmosphere. I'm not saying it's a universally good thing. We definitely want to clean up our mess, but there's a it's a big problem, and in order to reverse course on that, we have to look at, okay, why are we putting so much CO2 up? Well, the bulk of it is we're burning coal and gas and oil and these things that we need for energy. So to make a difference, you're
Mm.
going to have to change energy. There is no other way to solve climate change. You have to fix energy. And and at the same time, so we not only need to change the way we do energy so it's not emitting so much carbon dioxide, we also need to grow the amount of energy that we make. And the reason for that is we grew the number of people that we made. So we
Wow.
have, in the last 200 years, we've 10x the number of people on Earth. So we went from less than a
Mm.
billion to 8 billion people in the last 2 centuries. And that's crazy. And the world
That's
has
crazy.
never done that before, so far as we know. Like, there's no precedent for having this many people with no additional planets. So, to provide for those people, what did we do? No, we 10x global energy production. And we
That's
did
right.
that by burning more coal and oil and gas. So, the
Yeah.
problem is, it's still not enough.
Right.
Americans got 100x more energy in those 200 years, right? So we actually get
Yes, we did.
100 times as much energy. Most people on Earth got 10 times as much in the last century or so.
We do the toaster
Oh, the toaster
analogy.
analogy is how I usually describe that. Yeah, you remember that one.
I
The
love
toaster analogy. Yeah, so
it. Of course.
Americans get
Good.
9 toasters. Everybody else on Earth gets 1 toaster worth of energy. So if you like super glue the button down on a toaster and run it 24 hours a day, that's how much energy an average human gets on Earth for all their food,
Yeah.
transport, cooking, heating, cooling. But Americans get 9 toasters. And that's an insane delta. If you want to understand inequality, start there. So, to solve this, we really need to 10x global energy production again. And to do that, of course, would be pretty irresponsible to do it by burning more coal and oil and gas. But go look at the charts. America is we're mining and selling more oil now than ever. We are setting records right now. We are selling more oil than we ever have in all of history, despite all the talk about climate change and all those things. So, look, we need oil and gas. I'm not saying don't do it. They're very important, and that's how we got as far as we did. But those are not the end game solutions for serving all these
Right.
people. So we need to ramp up. And of course, the one that is the cleanest, the safest, and makes the most power 24/7 is nuclear reactors. And we chose not to build them. We have a few, but we outlawed them, and that's causing a lot of problems. If we had built nuclear reactors since the 80s, you never would have heard of global warming. But here we are living with those
Really?
consequences. And so it's time to course correct on those things. We've got the wrong story in our head, and it's time to fix that
I know.
and invent other solutions as well. And so there's still a place for some of these other technologies, but the one we know would be possible to scale up and 10x global energy production now is nuclear reactors.
Well, slightly unrelated, but do you believe it there's life on other planets? And how many toasters of energy do you think I equal?
You and I are easily in the 20, 30, 40 toaster range.
We are. We're big
Yeah,
toaster energy. Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating at all. To get these averages, 3 billion people live on less than one toaster. So that's just how that goes. I think, you know, life on other planets, I mean, statistically highly probable. Are we going to interact with them? Statistically very improbable. So I don't know. Yeah.
Diplomatic answer. I
Yeah.
like it. Okay. Favorite place in nature. Where
Oh,
is your favorite
oh, in
place in
nature. Oh man, that's an interesting one. I grew up with more nature than is healthy. I know that
Hmm.
sounds wild to people, but I lived in the woods by a river in the mountains in Alaska. Like you just couldn't get any more nature. I
Yeah.
was surrounded by nature for thousands of miles. So I don't have the same, I want to be in a city. Like I've had enough nature for several lifetimes. But I think my favorite memories are like I used to go rock climbing in Alaska. On the weekends, we just set off in some random direction and see if we could find rocks to climb. I mean, it's sort of crazy to think about now. This is before rock gyms were invented and that kind of stuff. And so some of my best times were just hanging out in a back a valley looking for rocks to climb.
Hmm.
So probably I would say that's my favorite. I'm unlikely to do that again.
That's very cool, though. That is a different upbringing. You have a
Yeah.
different perspective. Do you have a book
Mm.
or documentary or movie
Yeah, I'm writing a
recommendation for the
bestseller
masses?
right now, which is also called Deep Future,
Great.
which is the name of the
Great.
podcast and the venture firm.
Digest. Future.
So
Yes.
the Deep Future book hopefully will come out and be at the airport later this year. That's shameless plug for a book that doesn't exist yet. Books that I like, a really good one to read right now for this audience in particular is a book by Bjorn Lomborg called Best Things
Hmm.
First. It might be called Best Ideas First. Um, that book is really, really, really good. He does a great job
Okay.
of explaining the biggest problems in the world, breaking down what it would take to really attack those problems, and then helping you understand why it's important to uh, go after, to rank those things, and go after the ones that give you the most bang for your buck early, because there's this compounding effect. And so, if you go
Hmm.
try to solve the wrong problem first, you will spend a lot more money, not get as far, and you won't have any money left to go after the low hanging fruit. So he's really good at explaining those things. He's done a great job of writing about those problems. He does it in the context of the SDGs, trying to show
Hmm.
the different SDGs because there are a lot of them now, and help people rank those things and understand what each one of them would actually cost to solve. And so I think it's a very
Hmm.
good book. It's much less technology oriented than I tend to be because I'm looking for those kingpin solutions that we can use, but he's more showing from an economics perspective, and a societal perspective what it will take to make the difference that we want. So I think it's a really good book for people to read right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Last question. How much do you love salsa
Oh
dancing?
man, I am an obsessed salsa dancer and dancing for almost decades now. But yeah, these days I've been dancing less, but I do love it. I got to go dance in a Cuban club in Miami last week, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah,
Fun.
yeah,
Well, we'll have to do that sometime. We'll get the crew together and go
yeah. There you
salsa
go.
dancing.
I'm totally for it.
I need to take more lessons, but I love that you salsa
Yep.
dance. I think that's just the coolest.
Okay. Well, I don't know where you are.
And
I'm
you've got
going
the
to your
cool
neighborhood. I'm going to
classes,
your
right?
neighborhood on Friday.
I have cool stuff
There
on
you
too.
go.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll do it. Well, I have to keep up with your cool glasses, but I have this sunglasses. Pablos, thank you so
Well,
much. A wealth of knowledge and just such a good spirit behind it. So thank you for being generous with your
no,
time and your intelligence and all of it. I'm sure that it's going to move the needle. I know it already has. And it's just a pleasure to know you and an honor to watch how much more is going to happen. Any way we can walk with you,
no,
we want
thank
to.
you.
So
You guys
thank
are
you, my friend.
amazing. I really appreciate it. Glad I get to be part of the whole gang.
Oh, yeah, part of the fam, locked in.
Okay,
Thank you.
ciao.